Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Dygz and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are you two doing?
Doing great.
Great.
Well,
How do I sound, everybody?
yes, someone has a new mic. There were several comments about that, so made sure we got one of those. So we'll see how it goes. I've been trying to get your volume correct. And then we also have a guest, NK. How are you?
Hi. I'm doing as well as I can. That's about it.
It's like 4 a.m. where he is, so like, you know.
And for me, it's I woke up 11 hours ago, so it's fine. It's
Okay. All right.
Yes, I did not set this up, Dygz. I blame you for the timing. So, but yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about two very important things, I guess. Meaningful conflict, risk versus reward, two things that have become very prominent in the last couple of years, which we can get into. Before we start having this sort of conversation, and I don't know if you've been following Ashes for how long?
for 3 years, right after Lazy Peon's video from 2020.
Yes.
The video.
Yes, that video pulled in quite a large audience. And on the forums quite frequently, and Discord is where people can find you. So
Discord, not so much. Forums, definitely. A bit of Reddit. I usually check the threads, sometimes comment, sometimes no. I'm mostly on forums these days.
all right, well, awesome. Yeah, meaningful conflict, risk versus reward. A lot of this is sort of.
I have an announcement before we get into that, because
What?
there's been a change for me too. Remember I told you. You were right. I found a way to play after lunch.
Okay.
And that is because so a few people have been saying, oh, Dygz, we still want to see you in the game. And
Yes.
like one
Yes.
person was like, I would love to, meet you in a tavern and have a beer with you. And I was like, yeah, I can jump in and have a beer. Like, I don't know that I want to do any progression, but I can run over there, and I love to socialize. I can go in there, do that for 20 minutes or so. And then and I was like, and then I won't have to worry about getting jumped because I'm not going to do any progression, so it'll be the lowest level possible. I'm not going to be trying to get any gear, so I'll have the trash starter gear on me. I'm not doing progression, so if I get XP debt from dying, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be trying to get XP anyway. So yeah, people can kill me as much as they want, and I'm going to be doing the Care Bear challenge of 0 kills, and it's the ultimate Care Bear challenge because that means I can explore the open seas. People can kill me as much as they want on the open seas, and it's not going to do anything because again, I can get as much XP debt. None of the death penalties are going to matter for me. So
Whose boat you gonna use? You're gonna need a boat. Probably a bigger boat because a lot of people gonna hunt you.
I might. We'll see. Just explore the map as far as I can, and if the boat gets destroyed and I get another boat, I mean, we will be part of whatever the Theory Forge Guild is. So I think there will be assets and stuff. So yeah,
You might find some nice guild that'll tie you to the mast.
But the funniest part is I think that popped into my head on the way to dance class Thursday night, and then Friday I was remembering my Bartle score. It like this gameplay actually matches my Bartle score exactly because my Bartle score is Explorer 87, Socializer 73, Achiever 47, and Killer 0. So yeah, I will be exploring and literally doing 0 kills. Even though I'm a PvP sometimes person, it's not literally 0, but for Ashes of Creation, the plan is for it to be literally 0 kills. Normally, the Care Bear challenge is to get to max level with 0 kills, but I'm not gonna be trying to get to max. It actually is better if I have the least amount of experience as possible, because that will be the maximum amount of corruption where corruption is active. So you're right. I found a way to play.
I just wonder if your exploration experience is going to outpace your XP debt from all the deaths.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter, but I am curious to see how much XP I end up accruing just from, random stuff that, just by moving around in the game. I expect that I'll might be doing a little bit of harvesting, because I plan to help Phantom with his farming on his freehold, and I don't know what kind of stuff will, accrue from there, but yeah, that was kind of interesting Thursday to say, oh, yeah, if I don't do any progression, who cares about dying? Like, you're not interrupting my progression by giving me XP debt. I can have as much gear degradation as you want. I don't care. I've got cosmetics to cover up my appearance, so who cares?
I hope the very first gear doesn't even decay. Because if your first gear decays, that's gonna cut off several percent of people. What if they die to mobs, their gear decays to a point where they can't even fight the mobs they died to in the first place, and now they can't play. So I would assume your gear will be okay.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but then the other thing I think about from a balancing perspective, as a game developer, I would want somebody to be able to absolutely strip down, bare naked, fist fighting only, not use any abilities, and still be able to take down the puniest level 1 enemy outside. So even in that scenario that you've given, I want something, it's the first enemy. This thing is like below a tutorial. This is just like, a little snack in, at the beginning of a 12-course meal. It's like 3 chips you had in line outside or whatever. But
then how much XP would it give? Would it be enough to outpace the potential penalties that Dygz might get?
Depends on how good he is at killing things naked, I guess. I think for me, it's more that I hope things don't break so his cosmetics get knocked off as his things start degrading, because that would be embarrassing. Dygz, what happened to your fancy hat and cloak? Oh no, my things broke. My default items broke. Crap. I have nothing to attach to. Quick, someone hand me some rags.
I think it's always pretty easy to get starter gear that's cheap. Right.
Hopefully, yeah. So, by the way, Dygz, just for this podcast, I retook Bartel's exam thingy. I'm 73 explorer, 67 achiever, 40 killer, and 20 socializer. So I'm kind of close to you, but just way more of a killer.
Well, and you have achiever over socializer.
Yeah, quite high. Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense to me, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're following this in chat, Dygz, but we have nominated you for an achievement of finding and killing Dygz in game. Should award.
Right? And that's kind of cool too. Yeah, I don't mind that. That's a service. Come kill me as much as you want.
Just don't announce when you enter the server, so the achievement means something for those who go to hunt you.
I do wonder if they would let me design an NPC that was your name. You have that possibility.
I think so, and I actually have reasons for a request for that, but we won't get into that. But yeah.
Actually, you can cheat it. Instead of Briar Thorn, you can just use a lowercase m to look like an R and an N next to each other. People will never know the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, now we can move on to
well, it's interesting. So
conflict.
Yeah, so in terms of risk versus reward, you seem to be limiting your risk in that scenario, but what would be your reward?
I don't care about risk versus reward. That's the whole point. So, I mean, the only goal I have is just to uncover the map.
So the reward is basically funsies, which is like the entire purpose of playing games to begin with.
Well, I'm a player and not a gamer, so that's the other part of it.
So somewhere I want to start this conversation with risk versus reward and get everyone's opinion. We seem to be entering into this. I meant to do a video on this. I just haven't yet, as to why everyone was kind of, I think, well, not everyone, but a lot of people were upset with freeholds, was that it was, at least in my mind, never an expectation necessarily that freeholds would become a big source of risk versus reward. That it was, I just had never entered my mind. And so I'm curious, all of y'all's opinion. Does a game that is entirely full of risk versus reward in almost every aspect of what you could do as a character, that there is purposefully some sort of conflict that is based off risk versus reward, is that a fun game? Do you think that would be a fun way to play or live, keeping in mind that MMORPGs really we're supposed to live in them? That there's not.
What's the question?
Yeah, I saw you typing. You can't multitask for shit.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I answered
we
correctly.
seem to be getting a lot of risk versus reward everywhere. Freeholds were the sort of last part to this, where I just never even considered the idea of them being a big source of risk versus reward, scarcity, whatnot. And so I'm just curious what everyone's thought is on having a game where there's really no relief from meaningful conflict and risk versus reward.
No. So meaningful conflict is different than risk versus reward. So I think there's a lot of relief from meaningful conflicts because we don't hear very much about that. What we're hearing about is risk versus reward. It is in everything. And I would say for me, it wasn't even freeholds. It was with the bag announcement of even when you go to choose your bag to go pick some flowers, you're supposed to be thinking about economic warfare. And I'm like, really? Like, even without the open seas, I'm just going to pick some flowers. I don't want to have to be thinking about economic warfare every time I go out to pick some flowers. So there is this focus on way too much focus on risk versus reward for me. And that's different to me. That's not meaningful conflict. You trying to stop me because I want to pick some flowers there's nothing meaningful about that. That's just ridiculous. But
not meaningful for you, but it's meaningful for someone else who's trying to stop you.
Why are you stopping me from picking flowers? That's just ridiculous. That's my point.
I mean, they gotta have a reason somewhere, somehow they thought it up.
They like PvP. That's the reason. That's my point.
Potentially, or maybe they want to pick those flowers and you just happen to pass by and pick them instead of them. So now they are upset and they try to remove you from that place so they can pick their flowers themselves. Or maybe, I don't know, there's a node war and you just happen to be at war with their node. Or I don't know.
No,
there's got to be several reasons.
Or you've got a quest to poison the flowers.
Potentially, yeah.
They did not design the inventory of the flowers so for node war. He didn't say every time you go out you should be thinking about node wars. He said every time you pick a bag, you should be thinking about which bag you're going to take with you so that you can strategize for economic warfare. And that just seems ridiculous. When I go out to pick a bag, why do I have to think about economic warfare? That's just crazy.
Because I feel like for Steven, pretty much the whole game is warfare of some kind. And
I understand.
Yeah, and for him, that's meaningful conflict. Because risk and reward is just a attribute of the content rather than just a separate system. So anything has risk and reward. And I feel like risk just implies time spent on content, and reward is what you get for the time you put in. So the PvP or just even wiping on the boss or something, that's all the risk you take. And that's the time that you spend on that content. And if the reward matches the time you've spent, then risk and reward balanced out.
So, but that's part of my question. So I'll give my my interpretation of meaningful conflict later. Phantom, what were you thinking meaningful conflict meant when you first heard meaningful conflict? What were you thinking meaningful conflict would be?
Oh, well,
What would examples would be?
I mean, it's defined for us, right? So I, of course, been following this since Kickstarter. That's where I got interested in all of this. I was always say number 3 backer. I want to know who numbers 1 and 2 are, so I can off them and take their spots. So we actually had a definition. The specifics of what were in the Kickstarter video for meaningful conflict were, oh gosh, what were they? Battlegrounds, caravans, guild wars, I'm trying to think of what else it was. Yeah, yes. We had a pretty defined group of elements for that meaningful conflict of how the world would change. Yeah, I mean, there was within that some other things as well. I mean, if Jeffrey mentioned, maybe someone's running the metropolis differently than what you want, and so you want to play the game a different way, so you butt heads. There was the example of you really want to keep your freehold, and so there's a siege declared on your node, and you fight to keep it. So those were the sorts of things, meaningful conflict-wise, that I was prepared to encounter, and I still am. I'm not going to run from the game. I always knew that I would have to somehow transport goods, because I've always wanted this, and this is where freeholds hit me pretty hard, because that's all I've ever wanted to do in the 6 years that this game we've covered this game. So this last live stream was a little bit of okay, got to rethink things. But I always knew that I would have risk, because I would have to at some point transfer the goods that I process somewhere. And I'm more than willing to accept that. I guess what has sort of been eaten away over time, well, not eaten away, but, not having, that risk starts showing up everywhere. So now it's also on the freeholds. So now you have to question if I'm processing something, can I get, someone can come see, well, they're going to know what you're doing, right? Because you have the equipment. So they're going to know exactly what level you have. If you're sitting at a smelting station that's a tier 5 smelting station, they know you're probably making something pretty freaking cool, pretty badass. And so I think that puts you at more of a target. Those were the sorts of things that I was not prepared for in Kickstarter days. And again, things change. I'm sure they've talked about it, and there's been some internal dialogue, and for some reason this was just a decision they made. But those were the sorts of things that I was prepared for, and I was okay with that, because I was not going to participate really in battlegrounds. I wasn't really going to participate in guild wars. I'd probably do some sieges depending on the circumstances. Really, caravans were going to be my biggest thing, and even then I was probably going to offload that to someone else. But yeah, now you sort of look around, and I'm going to do a test. So I made this decision today. I'm going to start any mmorpg I can. I am going to try to create a character as early as I can. Just turn on PvP, whether it's a PvP server or not, just turn it on. Not to be threatening to other people, and just go play and see what happens. Because I'm kind of getting tired of all the back and forth, especially on the forums of, oh, there's nothing to worry about. No one will kill you. So I just kind of want to experience it. I know there's a lot of caveats to that. But I'm trying to get myself more prepared for kind of what to experience. Because I said I'm still all in for Ashes, but this was, that's a long-winded answer to your question of what I was sort of expecting as far as meaningful conflict.
Euro, what were you expecting meaningful conflict to mean?
In general, I was expecting meaningful conflict to cover more of like the nodes and their progression and the conflict, who controls what, who's been able to build up where, and when things start to come to an equilibrium, is it actually things becoming settled and still? Or is this just, the grounds for a catalyst, some group deciding, all right, it's time. We want to knock this place over, completely change the metropolis type in this region. We've been planning, we've been facilitating, that sort of stuff. The other side of things is what the world provides and what the players can do to drive events in the world, being the one who manages to get the claims for killing the dragon and get the loot for it and complete the quest and all of that sort of stuff. We know now that that quest will be completable by people who come back, and when the dragon comes back in 3 months or whatever, okay, you can try to be the ones that get it again. That also does kind of throw a little bit of a wrench in one of the elements of meaningful conflict I was kind of expecting, which was that things kind of happen with finality, with permanence, that when players end up doing something in total and completing it, you've slain the dragon, you've cleared the Tower of Carfin, whatever it is, that it would advance the world state to the next event. But that previous event is kaputski. It's done. It's gone. You're not going to see it anymore. That's the one thing that I think with the meaningful conflict I was also hoping to see, because it was part of that, like, it's not just world first of who beat this boss. It's world ever for that server. You only beat it once and then it's done. So that's the other side of the meaningful conflict I was kind of hoping to see. Not just the internodal and regional conflicts and who controls what and what's built up in what ways, but then also how the world changes and who changes it and who reaps the rewards of it. Now,
by the way, have there been MMOs that had that? The once in a lifetime? No?
Other than ones that actually have GM events like Ultima Online, for example, they would actually have curated things. I know Revival wanted to have the subscription gold servers where they would have GMs that were actually doing things in the world. I was excited for that. Didn't come through. It was a meow. It was a multiplayer evolving online world, kind of what Ashes is becoming. Then, of course, that was Revival. What was the other one? The EverQuest Next. We were hoping to see that sort of meaningful change. I don't know that anything was actually going to be permanent and finite changes in that world, but it did definitely give me the feeling that, like, Dygz' favorite example with the stealing the shadow magic from the essence from the dryads to make your stealth skills better, and then summoning the demons by accident. Now it's everybody's problem. Does it ever go back to the world state from before all the conflict happened, or is that state now gone? I was hoping to see that sort of thing, but unfortunately, once again, EverQuest Next didn't manifest, and sadly, unfortunately, Chronicles of Illyria, we got a lot of cool ideas and stuff, but it didn't get to the point where we could actually, play anything. So unfortunately, that's one where we didn't really get far enough to even see how it would have been implemented, just kind of getting a glimpse of it. But funny thing there is that, similar, the some of the brains and stuff behind Revival were also there at COE trying to basically do the same thing. And it's kind of a hard one, because all the legacy of trying to do a game like this, where you have meaningful conflict and player things driving the world, it's fallen through so many times that it seems like no investors and no companies ever want to touch it. And so really it does take someone like Steven to come through and try to make something like this. So
I mean,
right now, no.
Lots of people have tried.
Yeah.
EverQuest Next devs were trying, so lots of people have tried. We just haven't had one succeed yet. So.
He did not get very
Steven
far.
just has his money to at least try in a way where he can just fail and that's it. While other companies just try to a point, see that it might fail, and they just back off. So I hope Steven just follows through and sees where it leads. But
somehow Steven has unlimited money. That's
allegedly. Yeah.
I have no clue how he's able to back all this stuff for twice the amount of time that he was expecting to, all by himself.
I have my tinfoil theories, and
the only difference here is that there's unlimited money somehow. But so for me, trying to set stuff up so that you're stealing stuff from other players is meaningless conflict. The battle with mobs to be able to get the rights to get the loot and knock people off from being able to pick up loot, that's meaningless conflict to me. The meaningful conflict that I was looking forward to is the stuff like node sieges. So if there's what nine races and there's only 5 metros, and we have racial progression. So if you cannot get to the end of your racial progression unless there's a metro that has your dominant race, that might be a compelling reason for you to have to start a node siege, because you want to get to the end of your racial progression, and so that means you have to have somewhere on there a metro for that. That's meaningful conflict, and in that case, your reward is not really material, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because you are focused on the story of the game, or at least the story that you want to experience in the game. While for others, meaningful conflict is or has the reward that is tangible. So, for example, if we take your races and metros idea, for other people, the meaningful conflict would come if their race benefits were big enough for them to siege a whole metro and try to take it down.
That's what I'm saying, which is different than just, I see you have this bag, I'm going to steal your bag, I want whatever's in your bag. That is just, there's nothing new about that. That's what every other game does that, right? Every other PvP game does that. There's nothing new.
Not every. That's the point. You see, Lineage 2 gets brought up quite often when talking about Ashes, but Lineage 2 didn't have drops. The only people who would drop anything is PKers. So if you kill someone else, usually that meant meaningful conflict for people that saw meaning in that. So you'd kill for farming locations, you'd kill for placement or something, or displacement more likely. So
which is typical
you wouldn't kill for drops.
Right, but this is also typical of PvP morgs, right? Is you're vying for like a space. And what's new about Ashes of Creation, if they focused on that, is this changing the landscape. Like you get to build a city. There's only 5 cities, so there's a reason for you to do these sieges.
By the way, would you consider it meaningful conflict if the flowers that you were trying to pick up would have pushed the limit on the gathering limit within a node? When we were discussing the cutting trees and war through cutting trees back a few months ago, would you consider that meaningful conflict if someone came while you were trying to just pick flowers and they said you either stop or I kill you because you're gonna push the limit and something's gonna happen in the node?
There's a potential for that for land management, but we don't hear enough about land management, right?
True, yep.
So I would like to. I would rather hear more about that than
And if we hear more, and Steven says, "I consider this meaningful conflict," would you agree with him then?
It depends.
This is
on
still
how
the same situation.
It depends on how well, but I don't know that that's the same thing as every time you leave your house, you need to be thinking about economic.
Yeah, The fact that he said that was a bit edgy. I agree. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. The other example that Nero kind of alluded to is, and this is the kind of stuff that would get me to PvP, right? So I'm not going to PvP over what somebody has in their bag, and I'm not going to PvP. It's not right. That just doesn't interest me. I'm not going to PvP over trying to own a mob or own some land, but if I need to get to the end of my racial progression and I don't have a metro that will allow me to do that, I might have to start a siege so I can get to the end of my racial progression. The other one is the example from EverQuest Next, where you have in order to increase your stealth or to max your stealth. Stealth is derived from shadow magic, and to get shadow magic, you have to kill dryads and siphon off their life energy, and then you take it back to these dark elf places, and you convert that into shadow magic, and then you're able to increase your shadow magic. Your stealth. And since I spend most of my time exploring wild stealth, I'm definitely going to be interested in maxing my stealth, which means I might be out in Kittikor Forest killing dryads so I can siphon their life energy. And if a druid comes along and says, hey, you got to leave these dryads alone, I'd say, sorry. I mean, I'm doing what I got to do to get my shadow magic and my stealth. And if they try to stop me and they're a player druid, I might have to kill them because I'm just trying to get my stealth. I don't want to kill them, but they're attacking me. So I got to do what I got to do. On the other hand, if I'm a druid and I'm trying to protect the dryads, and I know that if I don't protect the dryads, it's going to cause these shadow demons to become released from bondage, and they're going to wreak havoc throughout the area and destroy all life. And I see somebody killing the dryads, I might have to say to them, hey, you got to stop because it's not going to be good for the region. And if they don't stop, I might have to kill them because that's what's best for the region. That's the kind of stuff that's going to, I'm not killing them because I want to loot them or because I just love PvP or it's like, it's best for the region if I do this thing. And I would prefer not to have to kill you, but you know,
would you try killing people who would try to stop you from trying to stop them? So, like you say, the shadow demons would come out. Would shadow demons have any kind of reward or anything associated with that?
So the reward is that the shadow demons don't kill everybody. That's what
I get that. If someone or somehow we manage to kill shadow demons, if like everyone collectively decides let's kill shadow demons because oh my god they happened, would they have loot or some rewards, quest rewards or anything related to them?
The reward is that the shadow demons didn't kill everybody. I assume there might be some other loot associated with that, but no, the reward is not loot. The reward is that
story reward, yeah, in your opinion. So
killing everybody.
Let's see, if they supposedly have some kind of loot and people want that loot, people would come to the place where someone might be killing dryads. They see that you are trying to prevent that and they start fighting you. Would you fight back? Or would you consider that not meaningful conflict?
Wait, say that again? Say that up again.
Someone is killing dryads. You don't want them to kill dryads. You will go there and try to stop the one who kills dryads. People who want to see shadow demons and want to kill them for their reward, whatever it is, come there and see that you are PvPing someone who's trying to create shadow demons, pretty much. Would you fight back against those people? Or would that be not meaningful conflict for you? Because they would come there, especially just to kill you. For no other reason.
So I'm somewhere and people just kill me because I'm there?
No. In your situation, there are dryads and someone is killing them. You don't want that first person to kill dryads, right?
Yes.
You are PvPing against them because you consider that meaningful conflict, right?
Yeah.
Now, the third party, say people to come there and fight you because they want dryads to die. But they just only fight you. Would you fight back?
They want dryads to die.
Because they want shadow demons for their reward.
Right. But
they want shadow demons to appear and then kill them.
But I would still be trying to prevent shadow demons from appearing.
So you would fight back and it would be meaningful conflict then, right?
And that would be meaningful conflict, probably, yeah.
Okay, so let's say the flowers or anything or the picking, gathering, whatever, somehow ties to how node functions or progresses or decays. Someone comes to kill you because you are collecting whatever or doing whatever because they believe that they progress the node or trying to destroy the node. So their overall idea for killing you is meaningful because they are trying to push the node.
So I think what you're saying is there a way for Steven to set things up so that there would be meaningful conflict?
More meaningful conflict for you.
I mean meaningful conflict, yeah, which is not just, hey, I see you have a bag and it fits.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I dislike fighting someone just to drop their loot. Yeah, I disagree.
So we agree. So we agree. My point is, yes, I would prefer for them to be him to focus more on meaningful conflict than,
in your opinion, meaningful conflict.
I mean, what he calls it is risk versus reward. He doesn't say meaningful conflict. He says this is risk versus reward, and he focuses on loot. Every time he says risk versus reward, the reward is always loot. And that's kind of what I'm saying. So I would rather there be a focus on meaningful conflict versus, oh my God, there's so much risk because it does the adrenaline and you can only get this through the thrill of PvP.
I think this is mainly the issue of Steven's wording and just overall presentation of his design.
It's not.
And that's it.
It's not, because what he really loves is adrenaline. He talks about that all the time. The only way you can have any, feel like you've made an accomplishment.
Yeah, and I agree with him in that. I love adrenaline too, and I love PvP for adrenaline, yes. But there can still be meaningful conflict behind that adrenaline. So I think that there is design in the game that you would agree, which is meaningful. But because Steven concentrates so much on, oh my God, the loot and the drops and the everything, you perceive the potential of that good design as either non-existent or just forgotten. So I think that Steven should just shift his presentation, or at least, ask Bill to present it in a better way or whatever. Because before we had Jeffrey, and like you like to say that Jeffrey said good things, he mentioned great designs and everything. But when he left, we got the C's change and risk reward and not for you and everything, all
and
that.
Why is that? Because what Steven
because Steven presents stuff. Yes, the C's change, I agree that was shit. I still don't know why they would need to do that. I hope they explain it, but I doubt it. But overall, the risk reward, it's still everywhere, even just if it's about nodes or if it's about loot. Steven just can't really present his designs and arguments in a way that you would agree with, I think.
Because what he really wants to do is maximize the adrenaline rush. He wants to maximize that. And I'm saying it doesn't have to be in everything.
I mean, if you go pick flowers and somehow there's a flower demon that starts following you because there was corruption nearby, the flower roots were connected to the corruption, and now some kind of demon follows you. Would you not experience adrenaline? To a less extent, but still.
No.
So if mobs follow you, there's no adrenaline for you, even if they are dangerous and follow you far.
So there's rarely adrenaline with demons or mobs following me. Usually I can handle that and avoid them. One, I'm almost always in stealth. Two, I almost always have some kind of root and snare, so I'm not at all concerned about. It's very rare that I get an adrenaline rush from mobs.
But unless every class has some kind of anti-stealth mechanics or skills or whatever, wouldn't your stealth save you from the player-driven adrenaline too?
No,
because you are picking flowers, they see you, just go stealth and you leave, and that's it.
No, because players will be able to see through stealth, and players are more ruthless than mobs are designed. Mobs usually
relatively.
Have tethers. Oh, no.
The stealth was fairly good. I don't know. Unless they somehow change it to even be more visible, I'd say that if you just run away real quick, also we don't know about running speeds and stealth and all of that stuff. So I feel like most players would just leave you if you run away in stealth. I know there are ruthless players. I've been that player. I fought them too. But majority wouldn't be. Plus the corruption.
I don't know that majority matters, but I mean, in this case, it's not going to matter because they can kill me as much as they want. But
I get it. Yeah, first level in first close.
Yeah, you know, players don't have tethers on them either. So it's more of an adrenaline rush running from players than it is from mobs for a variety of reasons. It's a more hardcore experience than mobs are. But no, it's really because Steven loves the adrenaline rush and he wants that in everything. That's why he's focused on risk versus reward, and he thinks that for him, you know, loot is a prime motivator. And I'd rather hear the other stuff that's, you know, more meaningful.
I hope Bill brings that. I really hope he does. And I definitely hope we see him on the Node showcase, especially considering that it got delayed.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Yeah, that would be great.
I hope 3-4 months should be enough for a lead designer, main lead designer, to get accustomed to the game and to the design and to know what he's talking about when we're talking about nodes. So I really hope he's on that showcase. Steven, if you're watching, please.
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing. I'm glad you said that here, because that is a brilliant request, is to have Bill on for the nodes presentation.
So since we're talking about risk versus reward, I want to mention something. I'm going to break in here just for a second and see where this goes. But something that has always driven me a little bit batty is that Steven will often mention a reward is meaningless if there was no risk associated with it. You know, this idea that if there was not some element of risk, then whatever reward you received really has no purpose, no meaning. It was a gift. It was everybody got one kind of thing. And I kind of disagree with that approach. I think first and foremost, everyone has different definitions for meaningful. I find the challenge of learning something new meaningful, not competing with someone else to see who can learn it first. As an example, I'm always starting different stuff around here, around our house, and just challenging myself to learn whether I can do it. Can I watch a YouTube video and end up producing something semi close to whatever it was I was thinking of doing? I find that challenging. I find that rewarding. There's not a lot of risk in it. So I'm curious. Everyone's
Steven not contrasts mistakes risk for struggle. I've been thinking about this, and I think that his risk versus reward is just the struggle and overcoming of struggle. So if you struggle through anything or any level of something, then your reward will be more meaningful. So like when you try to learn to do something new, you'd struggle a bit because your brain tries to understand it, and then it's meaningful for you because you have overcome the limitations of not understanding something. And I feel like Steven just applies that struggle to mostly PvP just because he's most accustomed to PvP through Lineage and Arcade. So I feel it's just about struggle for him.
I think there is always risk. It might just not be then and there at the time that you're doing the thing.
Also true.
And so it's that you might know that if you get on at 11 p.m. and you go, southeast a certain distance, and there's all these blue shiny nodes, no one's ever there, nobody ever checks it, it's your own secret spot, nobody's ever seen you even go that way and back. It is as safe as one could possibly expect. Now, every time you go there and back, obviously there's the risk that somebody may spot you, but let's say that never even happens. You are managing to, through planning, avoid the other factor of risk, which is encountering players. And now what the risk is, well, it isn't going there and getting it, is making sure you're there on time every time. If you're there at midnight, no, somehow someone's there. If you're there at 10, everyone's around. They're going to follow you, bad idea. You got to come on at 11 p.m. It's the only time you can do it, but it's safe. Well, then what's the risk there? that at 11 p.m. every day, you got to like set that the way in your schedule. It's like, honey, you get me early, you get me late, but when 11 comes around, that's my time on the computer. I gotta go get these crystals. I feel like there is going to always be the risk there that, it is ever present. The game is always changing. The players are always moving and things. You might just not experience the risk at that moment because you managed to be lucky and time it when people aren't there, or maybe people just weren't on, or maybe there was a server crash in the middle of the night and at 3 a.m. nobody decided to stay on. So you woke up at 3 a.m. Your buddy told you, hey, server's back up. It's just you and me, bro. Get on. And so you get on and you just, get your fair share of whatever you want. The
main risk there is that there's going to be someone else as smart or as tricky or as just as lucky to run into you. And then the main competition is he knows that you are doing this exactly because there's no one else. So he's going to stay there. And like Dygz says, players are always more ruthless. So there's the risk. So I'm sure that a lot of people have experienced what you said, that servers were down. You think everyone's going to be gone even if they go up. But then you learn that they just went up. You go there. Oh, my God, it's empty and everything. So as soon as someone else also learns that and you just so happen to go to the same place, you've got direct competition. So there's the risks. So you might get lucky, but that's what risk is about. It's all chance.
And to that extent, I say there is no risk in the game whatsoever. There is no entity. There's no temporality by which there is no risk. You might just happen to get lucky.
Yep.
My issue, I think, with this emphasis on risk versus reward, obsession with risk versus reward, agrees somewhat Noani, I think, if you're saying that Noani has been saying that Steven doesn't talk enough about the PvE aspects, because every time Steven talks about risk versus reward, it really seems to be PvP. Even with the open seas, I don't think he talked very much about
He implied it. He said that the content will be so great with the reward so amazing that it justifies PvP permanently there. I'm still waiting to learn what that content is, what the reward is, and why the hell we need seas full of flagged people. But I mean, Steven is Steven.
But I'm saying I would have maybe liked to have heard about the mobs that are going to be there. They're going to be dragons.
That's the content. That's the content. But
Well,
he implied. He just implied it.
Well, we heard there's going to be increased treasure. There's going to be stuff like that. I think we heard more about what the reward content is going to be, but we don't hear enough about the
Specifics.
dangers or the risk from the mobs. We aren't hearing about risk from mobs and NPCs. Yeah. We're hearing about risk for PvP. And
my current theory is they haven't figured out mob AI correctly, so they can't show or explain how mobs will be difficult or dangerous. They plan to be like, oh my God, bosses will become stronger and smarter if you've cleared the previous bosses fast, or dungeons will be deep and dangerous and whatever, but we haven't seen any of that, which is why Noani says that we haven't heard anything about PvE.
I think a few months before the open seas, we did see a monster demo, art demo of giant sea creatures, and he said, "Oh yeah, when you come across these, it's going to be
so grayscale, yeah."
But he didn't directly tie that to open seas when he talked about open seas.
Yep.
I don't think he has.
That's why I say implication. It's all implied. You see a huge ass monster that's supposed to will be in the sea. You assume that he'll be in the open seas. So he'll probably be rewardful.
He didn't connect them, right?
Yep. It's all about
saw one
messaging.
thing.
Steven's main problem is messaging.
Well, and also because he loves talking about the PvP stuff and the adrenaline rush. That's part of what
I think that's still under messaging because there's still the whole entire game outside of PvP, even if PvP is quite spread out. But he could have been messaging for us about PvE, about nodes, which I hope we're gonna see in a month, about a ton of other things. And we have been getting artisanry and whatever, although even there he managed to get PvP in. I agree that the Vex thing was a bit weird.
So I think you're getting at, Dygz, kind of what I was trying to say is that there's different people experience rewards differently. So the constant use of it in that way just kind of drives me a little crazy because as you put it, it sort of ignores quite a lot of other aspects of the game. And I think for me, at least, it's sort of a turnoff. I've even probably made comments like, if I hear risk versus reward one more time, for me, risk is, well, assuming we have a good crafting system, failing at a craft. My skill is borderline where it needs to be. I have some really hard to obtain materials. I'm going to try to make this. I might not. If I don't, I potentially lose something out of the materials. That's risk. And the reward for that is creating an item that's badass afterwards and that hopefully gains me skill. My risk assessments aren't not going to be in the battlefield. And so...
which is why I said that risk is mainly time and struggle. Probably multiplied across each other. If there's a ton of time that you spend to get those materials, to learn the recipe, and to build up everything you need for crafting, and then you struggle to craft it, if you haven't overcome the struggle, you failed, there's no reward, and you've spent a ton of time, which kind of was risky because you've now failed. Which is why I say so. The risk is just time and struggle. And Steven, again, his messaging is just, oh my god, PvP, let's fight each other, let's loot some drops, and that's it.
So,
well, and so real quick on that note, struggle, he seems to, again, focus a lot on that. Although previously, they would say things like they are creating content for casuals, and I'm not hearing what that is. Previously, he said that they are creating content for solo players, and I'm not hearing what that is. And it seems like the more we hear lately in the past year,
there's less and less of that. Yeah,
less and less of that. One of the early because we had that interesting. I shouldn't bring it up. I'm not going to bring that up that way because that's going to start a whole thing. Although NK and I agreed on this issue. There was a panel video, dev video. So maybe it was from PAX in 2018, and someone was asking how they planned to support various groups. Maybe solo players, maybe they were specifically asking about casual players. How do you plan to support casual players? And Akil was the first person to answer that question. He brought up Bartle, and he said, we have studied Bartle, and there's different groups, and we do try to think about them. The two groups that he mentioned were casual and explorers, and he said that he and Jeffrey talk about that stuff all the time. So again, neither Akil is not there anymore. Jeffrey's not there anymore. A lot of those EQ devs who had key lead positions are not there anymore. So I wonder.
In Build with Trust.
Well, I'm just saying, over this past year, 2 years that we did not have a lead game designer, I'm just wondering how those conversations went. It kind of feels to me that we didn't have as many of those conversations between people like Akil and Jeffrey. And so some of this kind of snowballed. So that, we have a lot. We've been hearing a lot about features and mechanics that support Steven's playstyle specifically, but we haven't heard a lot about support for playstyles that are different than Steven's playstyle. So
I'm curious, has anyone had a good experience with meaningful conflict in any other multiplayer game? Something that actually felt positive. You might not have won, but actually felt like the outcome was a positive one in some way. Either changed the story, advanced something that, you know, some part of the server.
that's my point. I don't think meaningful conflicts existed before it was mentioned in EQ Next with Story Bricks, and I feel like I think the Ashes game design is like a simplified version of Story Bricks. So I don't think we've had anything in any previous MMORPG, which is why I don't PvP in other ones. But I'm looking forward to something like this because these are things that could actually motivate me to PvP in a way that other games do not.
Neuro?
Yeah, it's something that I think the more large scale the audience of player, the larger the amount of players playing in a digital format, the less meaningful the story stuff ends up being, unfortunately. Where I feel like things that happen in single player games are a lot more meaningful because I am the hero. I am the one affecting the change. In MMOs, I'm not the hero. Nobody's the hero. So to that extent, no, like it doesn't really usually feel like anything is explicitly that meaningful, except maybe who's got territory where for however long. And even then, that's maybe meaningful because anybody could have had that territory. So it's just an arbitrary who runs it now. Now, when I look at like going to a different abstraction, a multiplayer game where as many people as the host running it is willing to accommodate, everything everyone's doing is massively meaningful, and that's tabletop role-playing games. Everything everybody does in a game of D&D absolutely matters unless you're just playing complete wacky like meme lord stuff and nothing actually matters. That's the session y'all are playing. You're going to do like D&D Rick and Morty. Fine. You know, I'm not going to tell you not how to play the game. Enjoy yourselves. But yeah, that's probably the thing. And I think about video games and role-playing games in the digital format always having wanted to be like some abstraction and automation of the tabletop role-playing experience as we saw it in like early D&D and other tabletop games of the era, and other ones that kind of sprung up readily throughout like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. It's those things have a level of curation and intimacy that the video games just can't quite get. You can get a lot of the elements in a lot of different ways, but like the more you have to represent everything, the more work that has to go into being able to facilitate the changes that are going on. A mud, for example, you could blow out a wall and it's a mud. It's just, you know, okay, the east wall has a hole in it now. Great job. You affected, you know, maybe it's meaningful change in the world. Maybe someone's going to come by and repair it tomorrow. But that's kind of where I'm at in terms of experiences. Like MMOs, not as much. Not really.
How often have you encountered PvP when you're playing D&D, Nero?
PvP is something in D&D that you're signing up for. Other than the first time I played with a certain group and the punk rock drummer dude who I've been in band with for a few years decides the first move is to come over with this rogue character and try to jack my stuff. Well, of course, he isn't even a member of the party yet. Yeah, you're going to see this new dude that's camped out on the road. Of course, you're going to try to rob him. And, you know, okay, that's that is a meaningful player conflict because playing, actually role playing and playing the rules as intended. He passed the roll. He rifled through my stuff. He got to take some gold. I didn't notice it. And unless my character is such a meticulous and pedantic jerk that he counts his coin purse every single night before he goes to bed and counts it again in the morning, legitimately my character wouldn't have known. So, there are players that do stuff like that. They'll take something, especially like your neutral to chaotic roguey types. They definitely love taking things without permission. That's not like a D&D, like a kill or be killed tournament.
But PvP combat, how often, or PvP, like one of the players is trying to kill another player, how often have you encountered that in D&D?
Oh, it's always an accident when that happens. It's it's like, oh, we're fighting these witches in the windmill. Well, I said we weren't going to collapse the second floor, but they're all there and we got them beat up, so I'm going to collapse the second floor. Wait, everybody's in here except you. Yep, I'm going to collapse the second floor.
Right.
Specific campaign. The Dope Crew, he was there. He knows exactly the campaign I'm talking about.
So you've rarely encountered other players trying to kill you.
If it's actually a campaign where you're trying to kill other players, or it is something where you're consenting going into it for it to be a game where players might kill other players and take their stuff, and you might have to re-roll and then, have a chip on your shoulder about it. No, I haven't joined any sort of game like that.
Yeah, so for me, I've been playing for 42 years, something like that, and I think I've encountered twice where someone has decided to do a sneak attack. Like we were playing, and maybe I don't know, 8 or 9 months in, one of the guys was, I'm secretly evil and I poisoned all of you while you were asleep and you didn't notice. And then I think it's been 20 years, a 20-year gap between experiencing something like that. And so that's one of the interesting things for me too. Not only this terminology that really my conversations with NiKr since he's been on the show has kind of helped me to see the different viewpoints of what PvP and PvE means for somebody who plays on a PvE only server, and what it means for someone who plays a lot of different types of games with PvP other than MMORPGs. But this tension that we have between the people who want PvP in and the people who want to really, 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 really focus on PvE is that D&D and RPGs prior to UO was PvE. That's what it is. You get a bunch of friends together and they come together and cooperate, and they're killing mobs and NPCs. UO did bring in gamers who were like, yeah, we want this competition and we want to have competition with other players, and we're going to have PvP. And you have a lot of people who loved playing that. But then when EQ came out, we had PvE servers, so we could get back to that. The people who are playing RPGs with just PvE, we could go back to that. But we have a whole generation of people who only play on PvP servers, or who like to focus on games like Shadowbane and stuff like that. And they seem, their tension is that with MMORPGs, PvP always seems to be tacked on. It's, developed as PvE, and then the PvP feels like it's tacked on, which makes sense because it's coming from an RPG, and RPGs were primarily PvE, and you are kind of tacking on PvP. But at this point, the PvPers are saying, no, you're ruining our game. And it's like, well, we're just trying to understand. We kind of expect to be able to do some PvE that's not so interrupted by PvP. And we want to know if this is one of those games, and Steven has done a really poor job over the past 5 years of saying, hey, this is a PvP-centric game. If you don't like PvP-centric games like EVE Online and ArcAge, maybe this isn't the game for you. I think one of the frustrating parts, too, is he'll say Ashes isn't made for everyone, but he won't tell us who Ashes is made for and who it's not made for. So when people say, well, it's your choice, it's like, I could make that choice easier if you would tell me who the target audience is and who the target audience isn't.
I think he's starting to make it pretty clear. I mean, he does still say
Lately, yeah.
Yeah, I think he still does say there's things for solo players and casual players and PvE, but really any time that comment is used as far as maybe this isn't the game for you, it's almost always been, and somebody can try to prove me wrong, maybe I am wrong, but I feel like that comment has literally always been used in either a PvP conversation or a risk versus reward conversation. Those are the two scenarios when that, and I think by that you start to see that narrowing of the target audience.
He's been using risk versus reward. He's been doing that more often since the Open Seas was released. But part of what I'm saying is even when I would say, hey, is this PvP centric? He'd say, no, it's not. And he'll frequently say, I think he still will say, it's not a PvP centric game. And that just confuses things. So that's what I'm saying. He doesn't clearly say it. The more he introduces the features and mechanics, then we start to go, hey, wait a second, that's a little bit more PvP than I was expecting. Or, hey, that's a bit more hardcore than I was expecting. And then you kind of bit by bit over every couple of months since the announcement of the Open Seas go, oh, maybe this is like ArcAge. Oh, maybe this is like EVE Online. So that's the issue, is that it's coming out more and more now in the past year. But the first 4 years, it was so muddled, it would seem like you're still in the target audience. And now people are starting to realize, oh, I wish I had known that before. But it's all okay. I really do hope that it keeps going in this direction, because I do agree that the people who want a PvP-centric mmorpg should get to have one, because there are very few.
Yep.
But I think
Especially new ones.
Yeah, I think at some point it's in their best interest to narrow down that population, because as many people in chat are pointing out, I think this is going to be very hard to pull off if you're trying to satisfy, every group,
everyone at once.
And so I think it's in their best interest, and it's probably disappointing for some people to hear. I'm still sold on it. I'm still going to be in there, but on the forums, there's certainly, I think, disappointed people at times, but they're still on the forums, so they've not gone anywhere.
Yeah, and I would say for myself, I'm not disappointed. I'm just surprised is even a little extreme. It's just like, I had directly asked them 5 years ago to try and ascertain, is this a PvP centric game that I'm probably not going to want to play? And he was like, no, it's not PvP centric, and no, you'll probably find a place in it. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's see. And then he made the change, and I was like, oh, I was not expecting to be over here, but okay. No, I definitely hope that and people who love Steven's play style, I hope they have a lot of fun playing, and it'll be interesting for me to play too. So.
Well, we are starting to run over, so
a bit, yeah.
Anything anyone else has to say about meaningful conflict, or?
I can answer the question just for me about meaningful conflict. My whole 12 years of Lineage were meaningful to me just because I cared about not the story of the game, but the story of each server that I played on. So all the castles that would get sieged and thrown around, all the fortresses, all the clans that would build up and fall apart, all of that was the story of the server. And that was meaningful because I enjoyed that. I knew those people. I talked to them. I played with them. I played against them. A ton of rivalries, friendships, like lifelong friendships. all of that was meaningful exactly because it was pretty much all PvP. It was a pure sandbox where barely anyone cared about the story of the game or what the mobs did or whatever. It was just a backdrop for the sandbox of people interacting with people. So I'd say that PvP games, especially sandbox ones, the ones that at least try to combine RPGs with PvP, succeed in being kind of like D&D. It's just that they have more conflict between players than just cooperation, because the story is still there. You still join a party, the party joins a huge clan that just goes around helping people or fighting other people, and at the end of the story of the server, or maybe even the whole game, you have a years-long history between hundreds, if not thousands of people. So I think that if Ashes manages to have content for not just the PvPers, way more people will get to enjoy and experience a good PvP kind of centric sandbox MMO. Sand Park, we'll see about the park part.
Yeah, well, I think in that case, Phantom didn't say this, but I think he would maybe say that there's meaningful conflict in Eve.
I would hope so, because my God, the stories from that game.
Oh yeah, no, that's the other focal point when it comes to narrative, player created narrative that has made me very excited about Ashes of Creation is that I have thoroughly enjoyed reading all of the articles that have come out about the stories from Eve online. I think what's the famous the Matani sends his regards, I think, is one of them. But so yes, I would 100% that's meaningful conflict. That's world change. I mean, huge world change. Like monumental things occur in that game that produce these memorable stories. It's not like Guild A went and finally killed raid boss for the first time in World of Warcraft like that. Everyone eventually does that. So that's not to say it's not rewarding or meaningful to that person, but I am looking at the world scope here, and yes, I 100% sure as hell hope we get stories out of Ashes like Eve, because that's what I hope for.
That would also attract a lot of players.
With Eve, when you can put a dollar value on the amount of loss that occurred in a battle, I think that actually that puts a lot of magnitude in like the actual risk and reward of like what really is on the line, what really just got wiped out. That full-size mothership getting blown up because it accidentally jumped into the wrong place and then got interdicted and a big war broke out. Yeah, that's. You're not getting that experience back. You're not getting that ship back. You always have that experience, though. You got to be there. You got to be a part of it. Or otherwise, it's like everyone else. You got to hear about it. Even if you don't play the game, it's like, holy crap, what happened? Like, that's I think, one of the things with the game that the player-driven stuff, it just has so much impact. Because you can quantify a dollar value of everything. And that I think resonates with people a lot more than, oh, I got 10 Thunder Furies. Well, what's a Thunder Fury? And $100,000 ship. I can tell you that much.
So, yes, I'm looking for meaningful conflict, hopefully in droves, just all the time. But within that, I'm not looking for risk all the time. Which hopefully, as we learn more about nodes, which is not coming out this next show, I'm sure everyone that watches us already probably knows that, but it got delayed, presumably until the next live stream. We will get clerics instead, an updated cleric. We'll learn more about nodes. Hopefully that will tell us a little bit more about meaningful conflict, like what we can expect.
Hopefully, yeah.
Supposedly we get cleric in the July one, which is next week or this coming week, and then we'll get nodes maybe for the August dev stream. Yeah. Right? That's what you're saying.
Allegedly, yeah.
Yeah. I assume that is just how long have we been talking about freeholds now? I mean, it has been a month, and there's been 2 streams, clarification article. I'm positive they're trying not to have that happen
Clarification
again.
streams.
Yes, with nodes. So
Well, I must say I kind of noticed that nodes gets delayed again.
Sooner
Seems
or
to be a
later,
pattern
we'll
now.
get nodes. Someone's
Later.
gonna send them. Someone's gonna
It
send
won't-
them.
It won't be sooner.
Yeah.
So Dygz has always, everyone actually, I know we're running over and we're about to end, but one of the first questions, like, why did Dygz, when we had Steven on, it's like, why was his first question about Nodes 3? It's because every time we have talked to Steven, he has asked about Nodes 3, and every time it is coming soon. So have to wait another month.
Yeah.
But although it's not Nodes 3, right? It's back to Nodes 1,
Yeah.
I think, the prequel.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
It's all about the reboots.
Yes. Well, they probably need to, because how long's it been since we had those Node videos?
Yeah.
I mean, those are years old, so it has to be rebooted. Anyways. Well, all right. NK, we very much appreciate you joining us and running over a little bit. And
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I'm so happy you were able to do that. Thank you so much.
And everyone else that is new to us still, we do this every Sunday, although we do throw in a PAX Day stream, and that is actually this coming Sunday. So if you are interested in PAX Day, we will be chatting about that with Lethality joins us as our fourth person. So should be a lot of fun. Otherwise, you can catch all our stuff on YouTube. And yeah, we are in Discord. If you like talking about games or even playing with us, just hit us up there, and we'll find fun stuff to do. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you back here next Sunday.
See ya.
See you later, everybody.
See ya.